Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jerred Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hi.
It's just you and I.
Yep. Just like classic.
Yeah. The old days when we first started, when we were talking about carbohydrate rinsing and all that fun stuff.
Wasn't sure this was going to be a thing.
Well, it is just us. And hopefully that's okay. Hopefully, I bet a bunch of people just signed off. They're like, oh, shit. It's just these two clowns.
Just get to the point.
But we are going to get into some science today. And I think this was a pretty interesting study, and it's really looking at testosterone in relation to a macronutrient, specifically fat. So we're going to be talking about that and testosterone levels there. The topic being the book Range by, is it David Epstein, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't want to get the wrong Epstein. So by David Epstein, and then who knows, we might have some time for some updates and definitely get into the Meet Yourself Saturday workout for the week, which is Quarter Mile for Humanity. It's a brutal one.
Yeah.
But we'll get into it. So the actual title of this study was Low-Fat Diets and Testosterone in Men. Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis of Intervention Studies, Whitaker et al. 2021. So it was done this year, which is pretty cool. And after they whittled everything down, so how they typically do these studies is, and I feel like I go over this every time we cover a meta-analysis or systematic review, but it's a study of studies. They look at all these other studies to try and come to bigger conclusions. And this one, I don't know, they had pretty strict criteria, so they ended up with only 6 eligible studies, which is a little bit low for a meta-analysis. And there were 206 participants. So still, it's a lot stronger than some of the studies that we have covered where it's like 13 participants or something like that. So it's still a pretty good one. But in the world of meta-analysis, it's kind of small. And so the current reviewed meta-analysis sought to determine if short-term, so 2 to 10 weeks of low-fat diets, 6.8 to 25% of total energy intake, which I thought was a big range, led to lower androgen levels in healthy men. So this is primarily looking at men, and they're just looking at the effects of high-fat versus low-fat diet interventions on levels of testosterone and testosterone-related stuff in men, like all the different binding globulins and all the fun stuff. They had a lot of different things they were measuring. But have you ever heard of a higher fat diet increasing testosterone or a lower fat diet decreasing testosterone, Joe?
I know I've tried to research before how nutrition would affect testosterone levels and whether adding or subtracting could affect it, but not much fat. Fat hasn't really been something that has come up. It's pointed more about certain micronutrients versus macro.
Yeah, so my first interaction with this was, I'm sure some people are familiar with Brett McKay from The Art of Manliness. He and I are friends. We've known each other for a while. And really cool website, cool podcast. Actually, some people listening to this podcast are probably here because they may have heard me on his podcast or whatever. But I interviewed him on the Better Humanology podcast. He was like one of the first, I don't know, I'd say 5 interviews that I did. So we're talking way back. But we ended up talking about fitness and I think the title of the episode ended up being like how to increase your testosterone naturally, because he had his blood tested and his testosterone was low, and then he was going to see if he could fix it. And I don't remember the time period and what he did, but it was funny. He was just like, well, I started lifting really heavy weights. I started eating eggs and bacon every single morning, and like steak for dinner, just a lot of like saturated fat and all this stuff. And then he got it checked, and like his levels, his testosterone levels shot up significantly. And what would be perceived to some people a less healthy diet of like eggs and bacon every morning, and he increased his testosterone levels. So that was the first place I had ever heard of it. But there seems to be some truth to it, and I will say that there's with an asterisk as we go over some of this stuff. um, so the actual drop in testosterone was about 50 to 100 points, or what is it, something per deciliter, in response to low fat diets. So I think 100 is pretty big, like depending on where you're at as a man. I think I forgot what the normal levels are, but I think it's somewhere from like 600 to 900 is considered like a normal range, and then above that is high, and then below that is low. But so to drop 100 points based off of how much fat you consume, I think is pretty interesting. And we can get into some of the takeaways, because how they did it, I'm not going to jump into as much because it was a review of studies, right? And so each study kind of did it differently. But I pulled out 3 or 4 pretty interesting things from just having looked a little bit deeper into the studies. But I want to know, what did you find interesting, or any takeaways you got from this study?
The first one would be that vegans have low testosterone. No,
Did
just
it
kidding.
state that, or
Yeah, my
no?
science has
No,
concluded.
I had the same thought, man. It's I you can only wonder if that's the truth, I think, and it might be, it could be.
Well, I think one or two of the studies even looked at the types of fat, like which ones would, whether it's saturated, unsaturated, those which ones how they affect. And meats have certain kinds, and the nuts and stuff can only have certain kinds of those fats. So it is something to, I guess, look into and make sure to keep balanced. But um, yeah, I think that it's taking a long-term approach for nutrition and health and diet, and so is when you see these really extreme diets to one side or the other, they could be clearing up for one reason or another. And if you have a specific reason to have to eliminate, whether any extreme diet, to eliminate something for a specific reason, you identify that, isolate it, and then try and regulate back to a normal balanced, whether it's macro balance, micro balance, all of those things. But if you just see, oh, this extreme diet got me this, so I should just stick with this for a long time, there are other side effects, and sometimes some of them could be hormonal, and hormonal side effects take a long time to either adjust in general, like get back to normal. It could take a long time to see the side effects of it. So this is a really good analysis of that, looking at long term how these extreme diets can really affect. And I don't know, even though this is about testosterone, which is it's focused toward males, I know females will definitely have hormonal imbalances and such when it comes to diets. And I wish Ashley was here to say that, but like I know in the women's health track, she does like carb cycling, things like that, to help regulate hormones and things. I don't really know too much about carb cycling, but I just know either way. So like even if you're a female listening to this, there's still takeaways because of how going to extreme diets one way or the other can affect your hormones. And then there were other links to some of the other reasons why for the lower fat diets than that, because they could get lower zinc and vitamin D, which we've done a few studies on vitamin D, how important that is. So making sure zinc, vitamin D are part of the diets, like talking back with the vegetarians again, the vegans again, that might not be getting all those fats, those lower micronutrients, to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things that you mentioned, I wrote down as one of my takeaways too, is because there was one study that found reducing monosaturated fat and monosaturated and saturated fat intake while keeping total fat intake constant by increasing polyunsaturated fat intake led to reduced testosterone levels. So now I mean, that just makes this even more confusing and convoluted to me because it's like, okay, now we're not even just talking about one macronutrient. We're talking about a specific type of the macronutrient. Just like protein, like plant protein and meat protein or animal protein are not the same. They're not comparable. They're different, and it's same with fats. And so it does get a little bit crazy. But based on the data, it says in short term, so 2 to 10 weeks, fat restriction, so dropping fat intake from 39% of energy to 19% of energy results in statistically significant reduction in testosterone levels. So if we're doing the balanced approach, like my typical fat intake when I'm tracking macros is, 30 to 35%. That's kind of where I sit because we go typically a little bit lower carbohydrate and slightly higher fat. Some people will go maybe down to 25%, but we're talking about 19% of your macros coming from fat. I just feel like it's still not that low, and this can have an effect on your testosterone levels, which I think is pretty crazy. When we get really low, in some of the studies, down to 7%, so a super low fat diet, that's also going to show lower testosterone levels. But I feel like you'd have to be on a very specific diet to even achieve that. Even if you're a vegan, I mean, just if nuts are in your diet, that's going to be a significant amount of fat right there. So you have to very intentionally do this to get to the lower ends, but to get to 20% of your energy, like that's not that hard to do. And it can have an effect on testosterone levels. But overall, my kind of takeaway was like, I wouldn't worry too much about this unless you either are specifically testing testosterone levels, or you have like symptoms of low testosterone. And so I pulled those up just to like go over it. Reduced sex drive, reduced erectile function, loss of body hair, less beard growth, loss of lean muscle mass, feeling very tired all the time. So, fatigue, obesity, symptoms of depression, decreased libido or sexual activity, infertility, increased body fat, enlarged breasts, all these things, symptoms of low testosterone. Now, some of those are like a catch-all. It's like, I'm pretty tired all the time. It's like,
Yeah,
well, do you drink a lot of water and get enough
WebMD
sleep?
this.
Like, like some of these I wouldn't read too much into, but if you are like noticing something, like you're actually losing body hair or your sex drive just isn't there, but I would say it's been a more rapid change and it's in relation to a diet. This is just something I would pay attention to. I wouldn't be like, you know what? I'm, I think my beard is a little less thick. And so maybe I do have low testosterone. I wouldn't like jump to any of those conclusions. But if you do change your diet in some significant way, I would try and pay attention to those things. But that's like option B. Option A would be to actually test testosterone because I don't like going by feel when it comes to hormones and all this other stuff because you can convince yourself of anything, like you're saying. Like, yeah, you can go on WebMD and be convinced you have cancer in about 40 seconds. Be like, oh yeah, all of that, I got all of it. And so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you are going through some significant macronutrient breakdown, you're trying some sort of aggressive diet, I would pay attention to those things, any kind of symptoms that you're seeing, and then maybe make a shift if you are seeing those, because I mean, the more we dove into this, uh, there are even studies on keto saying that going keto, which is a very, very high fat diet, low carbohydrate, also can lower your testosterone. So my takeaway after looking kind of all the literature is just crazy diets are going to force you to like probably jack with your hormones a little bit. And still, we're only looking in the short term, 2 to 10 weeks here. We don't know if those normalize or rebound at 3 months, 6 months, a year. Maybe things just get back to normal if you've been doing that type of diet for a long time. I do know that some guys I know of who specifically test have gone keto and they've seen a huge decrease in testosterone, but then that did normalize like a year later to actually having good levels of testosterone. So I think the expectation is just if you're going to do some sort of crazy shift in your diet, and I don't mean crazy being going carnivore or vegan, but I just mean a crazy shift from you. If you're like have a crappy diet or even a well balanced diet, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go crazy low carb or I'm going to go crazy high fat, then I think at that point you probably will see some sort of change in your hormonal levels. And it's something that you should just be aware of is going to happen. Maybe it will normalize, but maybe get that blood test before you start 6 weeks in, a couple months in, and then and see if it ever rebounds. If it doesn't, you're not going to want to have low testosterone, especially as a guy for long periods of time, because it's gonna affect you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and for those that haven't listened to the doctor podcast that we have with Dr. Chris Morrissey, we talked about the blood test and what to get tested and things with testing. So you can check that out. But also when it comes to the testosterone test, so whenever you get a blood panel, you say, oh, okay, I need to get a fasted blood panel. I need you to take everything, and the doctor's like, okay, well, we'll get you a fasted blood panel. You actually have to specifically request for testosterone because they take like a different vial. There's a different solution in the vial that they take or something like that. So I didn't know that at first. When I went, I said I want the full panel of blood. I thought full meant full, but they just
Nope.
they just gave me everything else. I mean, thyroid was on there, but that was like the only hormone that was on there. Everything else is kind of specific. So when you get your blood test done, specifically ask for it, and I think it's good to get done even before you're showing symptoms or anything, just because of like having a baseline. Like that's why I got it tested at, I think I was 31 when I got that. Have a baseline, because then in a few years, if you are noticing things and you get a test and the doctor's like, oh, well, your normal range, you can be like, well, I was 150 points higher a couple of years ago. So, maybe that's a sign or something. So that's just my sense on that.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think um, Chris had some good point. I think he said annual is probably where you should go. Anything more frequent than that, like you have to really be working on it to see a change in any sort of
Hmm.
blood marker. And this is no sponsor, no affiliation, nothing like that. I just use the company Inside Tracker to get my blood tested at pretty extensive levels. So I think it's insidetracker.com, but you can just sign up for one of their blood tests. They have a very wide range of, I mean, I think it starts at $79 and goes up to $600 for how many different things that you can test. And I kind of decided this is something I'll probably just do like on an annual basis. But it's good to check all these things out, like testosterone and cholesterol and all these things where you do have this baseline going in and you can see if there are any big changes later. So something I do recommend. Do you feel that there's any way, shape, or form the listener can kill some comfort with this information?
Let's see. If you're, I guess we want one way or the other. If you're doing one extreme diet, then stop after 10, 12 weeks and switch to a normal one to regulate, instead of just focus on long-term health versus that short-term whatever thing you're going, unless you have like something that's very specific, like autoimmune that you're trying to clear up. But for the masses, I really just eat balanced. I don't know. It's simple. It's what we always kind of preach anyway, but this is just more of a um yeah, reason to.
Yeah, I would say along those same lines, how I would suggest anyone listening kill comfort in this scenario would be, more if you're on some sort of diet or you love some sort of diet paradigm. Maybe you're like, I went keto, I lost a bunch of weight, keto is for me. Maybe it is, but I would suggest that you pick a diet that you honestly think you could maintain and do for 20 or 30 years. Like that's going to be the best type of diet to go for. I think in like an extremely low carb or any any of these extremes are going to be temporary. It's like a tool you pull out of the toolbox to maybe achieve a goal, but then you have to learn how to live life after that and be normal. So just because you saw some success with something doesn't mean that, it's what you should always do. And so I guess I'm asking people to question their own beliefs in nutrition, and back it up with data. I don't care how you say you feel. I don't care how much weight you say you lost. I think you should get some blood test, look at things, and see if things are actually moving in the direction you actually want them to. So use some objective data to make better decisions for your diet.
Well,
Yeah. And if you feel like you have low testosterone, maybe go eat some fat.
bacon and eggs.
Yeah.
Bacon and eggs, lift something heavy.
That is the answer according to Brett McKay from The Art of Manliness. All right, let's get into this book.
It's
Uh,
funny that I don't know how this happens sometimes, but sometimes our studies that we pick out and then we put a topic in, but sometimes they just fit perfectly. And I think these two kind of have a common theme.
they do. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. So this book is called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. So I mean, you really get a lot from the title there. Yeah,
Yeah.
the book really is about being a generalist over a specialist and making a case for that. And I mean, they cover everything from sports professional athletes to doctors to specialists, almost of any kind. How people learn. Um, being open-minded. There's a lot of things covered in this book overall, but the main premise behind the book is don't worry so much about being a specialist. There are a ton of advantages to being a generalist in your career and life in general. Kind of takeaways being you have more creativity to solve problems, and a lot of people don't actually have that level of specificity. And I'm just going to jump straight into like a few of my takeaways, which were the sports side of it, because I've done a lot of research on this, and I'm not concerned for myself. I'm just always thinking about my kids because I have a lot of friends who are physical therapists, and they've showed me a lot of research that a lot of high level athletes didn't play one sport. Like they didn't. It wasn't like Tom Brady picked up a football at 2 and had played football all the way up till now, and that's the only thing he ever did. And I don't know about Tom Brady specifically. I'm just saying for most professional athletes, a lot of them were very well rounded. They played a lot of other sports to include their main sports, and that helped them injury proof them, it helped them learn more about their bodies, proprioception, all these things they learn by playing other sports. And I've always thought about that because I'm not trying to make my kids be professional athletes, but if your kid is good at something, you just kind of wonder like how far should we go down this path? Should they play other sports or whatever? I'm gonna just kind of let my kids do whatever they want. But they give Tiger Woods versus Roger Federer example, where Tiger Woods was that kid, and I mean, to be honest, he's probably like the only one I'm truly aware of that started training his sport at the age of 2, basically forced by his dad. Did have some natural talent, and then just practiced his whole life and became the best in the world. But then Roger Federer was different. Roger Federer played a lot of other sports and this, that, and the other, and then eventually came around to tennis a little bit later than most people would, and then also best in the world at his sport. And so it's kind of like, yeah, you don't have to be that. And there are a lot of other stuff. What were some of your takeaways? I'll get into some of the other points, but what are some of your takeaways from the being a generalist over a specialist?
I think the sports example that he gave in the book were kind of the best ones that people can really picture. And to answer about Tom Brady, he was actually a baseball player. He was drafted to be a baseball player before football.
Oh, cool.
So
There you go. I just
yeah,
knew it.
yeah. So yeah, I think the sports examples really get his point across first, which so it's good in the book that that's kind of how he leads with, because he compares Tiger and Federer and talks about some other athletes of how being so dynamic in all your sports. And I mean that's just how, if you look at a lot of athletes now, I know I pretty much only watch uh, football, and they always talk about how they were a great baseball player, great track player, basketball player, and all these things. And there's even some, I think there's he might mention this in the book, but there's some college coaches who will actively recruit multi-sport athletes over an athlete that's just fantastic in another sport, because you never know when those skills are going to help you on the field. But then the rest of the book, he kind of goes over all of these other examples of those situations. Having a wider base is best for your overall development. And whatever you're going into, there can be a textbook, a guidelines of this is what it's going to be, this is how it's what you need to prepare for. But There's always going to be some crazy stuff that can happen no matter what you're either training for, preparing for, and looking for. And you never know when a curveball is going to come that is out of the realm of what you know, or whether you don't even know what you want to do and you need to change. But if you've only been training for one thing, then you're kind of stuck. And that's one another point that happens in, I think, the book, is that from 18 to 20 something, your brain is still adjusting and figuring out what it wants to be, who it wants to be, and what you think you want at 18. 5 years later, even though at 18 you were adamant about it, you're like, well, no, this is actually not at all what I want to do. And I know, just personally, I felt a whole lot of that too. That's a lot of times that changes in like the first year of college, if you're doing that, and then it changes again, and all of these things. So that's why being well-rounded and not pigeonholing yourself into one specific area is good. And that's why in this book kind of goes over that, at times ad nauseum. some of the some of the success stories are really long-winded, and there was also one or two that were, it seemed like a lucky outcome for how they got there. Like they just kept talking about all these things that these people did. And I'm just like, it sounds like they're just going through trial and error of all kinds of things and just waiting for something to stick, versus just like, hey, because I'm well rounded, I got good at this. So there was a couple of times while I was thinking that. But overall, that's the general idea, is that the more you're prepared, the more well rounded you are, the better you will be to be able to pivot to something else and possibly even succeed and excel at it.
Yeah. Um, Another takeaway I had later in the book, and this is kind of like a broad stroke from my perspective, I would just say he kind of just talks about learning in general and how like the struggle in learning is a very important thing. Like actually, like struggling with information and trying to find a solution as opposed to getting hints or getting help is helpful. And then also taking long breaks. And then he also talks about active open-mindedness, which are specialists are much less likely to participate in, like entertaining the fact that they could possibly be wrong about a given idea, So, and I think kind of my takeaway from there was how a generalist brain works is they have a lot more input from a lot of different areas. And so I think it makes better output. I think it can make you a lot more creative. And that's kind of one of his points in the book. And I completely agree with that. I mean, I've been in fitness for a long time now, but that's not where I started. I've kind of always been interested in fitness, but then I had to shift gears um, in college and then also in the Air Force to that not being allowed for that to be the only thing I learned, right? But I think basic aviation principles that I learned in the Air Force help with me doing what I do now, just in a lot of ways. So I do think that a culmination of experience can really help you get better. So I do agree. I think this book for me was kind of preaching to the choir, even in our training, right? Like we're concurrent training. We are the definition of generalists. Like none of us are going to be great at any one thing. We're just going to be extremely well rounded and live longer than everyone else. Maybe that'll be the thing that we're best at because of our well-rounded fitness routine. But I'm just all for it. Now I do agree. Getting to the book itself, love the idea. Yes, the whole book is a book of stories and a book of examples, which is okay. But I don't know. Like I guess I haven't. A lot of books use stories, but I mean it's just like story after story after story, and at some point, um, you have to like there's anecdotal and then there's scientific, right? And he does talk about some scientific studies in some regard, but a lot of it is just a story. Even the Tiger versus Federer, that's a great story, but it's still anecdotal. It's two human beings. You know what I mean? Like two out of all these other people we could look at who are the best in the world. And so I don't know. I think if you truly want to be the best in the world, I don't think that you can just be a generalist. I personally think that there has to be some level of specialist if we're talking about actually being the best in the world. And if we're going to the athlete perspective, like Yeah, they can do a lot of other things, but at some point, this was their only thing. And then they put in a lot of freaking time, more than anyone else, getting good at that thing. So I don't think the takeaway should be you can be this generalist who does all sorts of random shit. And then one day you'll just happen to click and be the best at something. I think it's more experiment with a lot of things, get good at learning, maybe being the biggest thing, like figure out how to learn and struggle in learning and learn quickly. And then maybe when you find something that you do love or can get good at quickly, you can become a specialist from your generalist tendencies. But I don't think the takeaway should be, yeah, everyone should be a generalist and that's how you become the best in the world. Because it's probably just not true. Like you have to really focus to be the best at something. But I love the idea. Too many stories is probably my only con. That oftentimes were anecdotal at best, and so overall, I guess we got to get into the rating of the book. How many fractional plates or barbells or kettlebells or
Perfect. So I'm
whatever?
gonna go 2.5
Two and a half.
out of 5.
That's
Yeah.
the worst rating you've given a book yet, I think. What was the?
Only because like
I didn't hear a lot of cons from you. So like, what? I mean, you slammed fiber fueled way more than this one. So how do we go to two and a half on this book?
see the difference with fiber fueled and this is that fiber fueled had a bunch of positive and a bunch of negative, and a lot of his negatives were just a bunch of jabs as he goes, but he was always introducing new things. This was just he got on one track and just stayed on that track for the entire way.
Yeah,
And I was just like, this track should be a lot shorter than it is.
yeah, that's the unfortunate thing with some of these nonfiction books is you sometimes you can get the idea in the first chapter and then
Yeah.
they just like beat a dead horse for 9 more hours.
Your TED talk's a bit too long.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know what the rest of the team rated it. Maybe we can update everyone. I'm gonna give it a 3. Um, maybe pretty much same reasons. I thought it was a cool idea. I agree with a lot of it. And I kind of disagree a little bit with it too. As you can tell towards the end, I don't think the takeaway should be a generalist, and I just feel like that's misleading if you're trying to be this jack of all trades, master of none for your whole life, and you're like, yeah, I'll be really good at something, but just keep
I think
doing
it's
random.
just starting off. You start broad and then get narrow. I don't
Right.
know if that point was as hammered
Yeah.
into it.
It didn't get because he would like prove his point in a story that see this person did lots of stuff and then they became the best in the world, and it's like we're really skipping over this best in the world part.
Hmm.
Like, how did that? When did that? Like, what was? Can we go into more detail of what they had to do to get to that point? Because he, like, in the just going back to the Tiger Federer example, he really honed in what Tiger did all the way up to being a professional. But then Federer, he just kind of mentioned how he was really well rounded, and then there wasn't a lot of a story after that. It was like, yeah, he
Yeah.
picked up tennis, and then he's the best. I mean, I know there's a little bit more than that, but it's like, well, anyway, yeah. So I give it a 3. I guess we're not really recommending this book. I feel like got to be at least a
We kind of get gave the entire premise.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hear a lot of stories, I do think if you have kids, it's maybe worth reading. Some saving grace here. If you have kids, it's probably worth reading. If you're worried about them needing to find their passion super early and you want to help them broaden their horizons by learning new things, I think as a parent, this might be a valuable book to read. I think that's probably my biggest takeaways or things for my kids and just guiding them as they become older and learn new things. So so yeah, that'll be my silver lining there.
Cool.
All right. You want to get into the workout?
Yep. Yep. So we got quarter mile for humanity. To me, this one is kind of fun, even though it's brutal. And like we have brutal ones that are just brutal, and you can't like you don't have any agency. You just have to kind of do it and die a little bit. But quarter mile with humanity for humanity with a barbell in the front rack. Perform 10 total lunges, 5 each leg. Then stop, stand in place, and do 5 reps push press. You will continue until you have completed 400 meters or a quarter mile distance. And if you don't have a 400-meter distance or can't do it, then you will do 60 rounds. So that means you will do the 5 lunges each leg plus 5 push press for 400 meters or 60 sets of that. And that means you get to choose the weight, go lighter than you think. Yeah, that's the main thing to me. Go lighter than you think. Your forearms are gonna kind of kill. Front rack, Yeah, I don't know what you got.
Go empty barbell, even.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't think I mean, most people aren't going to need more than that. Warm up the shoulders a lot. And so I've done this one. I haven't done this a lot. I mean, this may be one of like the fewest that I've done. I know I've done it at least twice. We also haven't programmed it that much, a ton of times. So, but I do know that I've just had shoulder issues over the years. They're probably like my least mobile body part. And so holding a front rack for long periods of time, like beyond like a set of front squats, is going to get painful if you're not like accustomed to it, So a lot of what helps me with that is a lot of lacrosse ball on the like deltoid area beforehand, really loosens them up. Yeah. And lats even. And just do that. I would recommend doing that for your warm up. Go super light, and go fast. I
Okay.
mean, you got to go fast on this one because it'll just be over faster, right?
Lats are the number one area I tell people if they're having trouble with their front rack, go to the lats first because they're the biggest. You're gonna get the biggest amount of play, and then between that to your triceps, and then maybe a little bit of that, that armpit area in between. Now, it's not your wrists, it's not your forearms. I've done a version of this like a long, long time ago. I used to do it. It's an exercise I think that SEAL Fit does called Curtis P's or P Curtis, whatever. And it also has hang cleans in it.
Hmm.
And so I used to do these just when I was on my last deployment. I saw those as an exercise. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna load up with 95 and I'll go down, drop it, rest, and then go back. So I was doing it as like
So
actual
what do you
sets.
do? You do lunge and then a push press and then a
It was
clean?
lunge, hang cleans, and then push press.
Okay. That sounds brutal.
Yeah. So and that was definitely a forearm and shoulder killer. It was an all weight killer. So, but there's no hang cleans here. So you're just going right into the push press. It's fine. It'll be fine. And you
Yeah.
can do this, I guess, with a sandbag if you have for
Yeah.
those sandbag athletes.
Yeah. Since we're embracing the sandbag a lot more these days on the hard to kill track. Um, I just did I mean, do you have any more tips for this one?
No, I mean you can rest in between your sets. You're probably going to need to. So I would set a goal to do like, hey, I'm going to do three couplet sets of this, or three or five, and then I'm going to set it down and rest and shake it out because a lot of times forearm and certain upper body, once that goes, it's going to be hard to hold it in general. So if you kind of rest a little bit, because it's essentially you're doing partially a weighted carry during this, and once weighted carries fail, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
For sure. Do it on a track. I think it'd be.
Yeah, take up 3 lanes,
Yeah.
stay on the inside lane.
Yeah, piss everybody off. Um, that barbell 7 feet too, right? That's how long this?
Yeah, yeah. There might be 4 lanes actually.
Yeah. All right. So no more tips on that one. Just really it's in the warm up and making sure that you're ready for it. Don't go super heavy. Those are the main things, main takeaways. Updates. We got some time. Only 2 podcasters this week, so we blew through most of the information pretty quickly. But do we have any updates, Joe? Do you have any life updates that we should let the
I mean,
community know about?
I'm in a hotel right now, so
With a
I don't know if it's
shaved face. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's been stated. I'm back in the States, in Northern California, doing my air guard drill days for a while and some order stuff. So I'm wearing 2 hats right now for a couple of weeks. And to just talk about the training and nutrition part while doing this, because I am still working, doing our stuff, and then working full time during the day. Training's still fine. I'm actually still getting averaging my 5 days a week. Luckily here there's built-in PT time, and then I'll also go and train during lunch. When my plan coming here, was because I was already thinking about it. I was already planning on doing it during lunch, and then just kind of like hammering my lunch out and eating it. But luckily they have some time baked in. But I still have my still work out during lunch on those non PT days, and then Saturdays I've been going for like a zone 2 run, just to kind of help do a little bit. And I will have a PT test coming up next weekend, most likely. So just kind of preparing for that. But nutrition was the biggest, especially traveling. It's always some of the hardest things to do. And luckily, the hotel that I'm at, I asked for a separate fridge So I'm that guy. I asked them to bring me a second mini fridge, and they did.
They
Super
did
nice.
it. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
At
crazy.
first, I went
So
to the
that's
desk.
the Air Force for all of our
I'm
listeners.
off base. This is a
Oh,
Holiday Inn. So,
I thought you were on base, which would have
no,
been just so
oh
embarrassing for the Air Force.
that would have been on base housing, yeah, or the hotel, yeah, because those a lot of times it's like a shared bathroom, but sometimes they have big fridges. Anyway, yeah. So when I went to the front desk, I was like, hey, can I get a second fridge? And the guy was like, I think all of our fridges are in the room, so we'd have to take one out of the other room, so probably not. I was like, all right, cool. And I left and I came back 10 minutes later and he was like, actually, we have some spares, so you'll get one. It's like, yes. So as soon as that happened, I got to my room and I got online and I ordered Ice Age meals.
Hmm.
Ordered a 16 pack of Ice Age meals. That's my lunch. Super easy.
Not a sponsor, but we
Yeah.
both eat them.
Oh, yeah. Um, breakfast is I got Huel. So it's kind of like a meal replacement protein shake, the Huel Black. And I also got sprouted rolled oats that I do overnight oats with because, well, it's better for you to do the overnight oats and not actually cook them. And I put in chia seed, some high fat granola, and protein to that. So those are my two breakfast options. And then dinner is on the weekends. I'll order some Thai. Usually Thai is like a cleaner kind of food to get. I usually, especially curry, because it's coconut milk and spices, and then like vegetables and like a lean meat. And I put that over top of some cabbage salad mix and some other. You can get like little individual things of steamed vegetables and a rotisserie chicken at Sprouts that I'm sitting by. I just put it in a bowl, mix it all up, and that's basically dinner. So still pretty dang clean for being living in a hotel remotely. Um, the weekends might not be as much, but still, I was pretty happy with my nutrition situation here and what I was able to get done. So that's just a little bit of tips if you are traveling. Some things that you can do that are really easy, and I don't have much at all of in the way of food prep. It's just kind of there, and I just kind of throw it together when I eat it.
Yeah, I think you just crushed everyone's excuse who travels frequently. Like, all you have to do is ask for a second fridge, people.
Yeah, what the heck? I don't know what I was gonna do if I didn't get that. I probably would have invaded the fridge at work, be like, "All right, guys, this is my corner."
Yeah, put your name on it.
Yeah,
It'll be too healthy for anyone to steal. No one's gonna be like, yeah, I want that.
yeah, right.
Um, I've been TDY for long periods of time and been in the exact same situation many times, many times, done the exact same thing. And I drafted a blog post a long time ago and I never published it. And it was 2 card tables in a microwave was the name of the
Yeah,
was the
that
name
nice thing.
that was the name I thought of for the blog post, because I actually had 2 card tables in my hotel room and 1 microwave and 1 mini fridge, and so that was going to be the title of it, which I thought was super creative.
Super awesome.
And I pretty much just highlighted everything that you kind of just said, because my diet's very similar in that situation. When I get in those situations, I normally have like Huel is not just a protein supplement; it's basically like a meal replacement. And I haven't taken Huel in a while, but I've had a lot of supplements like that are more meal replacement. So those are always good to have if you travel frequently.
Yeah,
If you
this is the only
can,
time I've used it as a meal replacement. Back home, I'll do like a half serving, but then I'll do a different kind of protein on top of that, just as a protein shake. But now I'm actually using like the full serving of Huel because that's just what I got to work with.
yeah. And then overnight oats, that's just a phenomenal thing. It's easy, right? You just put it in the fridge and then you have breakfast the next day or whenever you want to eat it. Um, and yeah, I think normally I would actually go buy like random stuff from the grocery store, but it would be like meat and vegetables. I mean, it would be kind of like I'm eating a bag of broccoli and like random deli meat. That's probably not the healthiest type
Well, I mean, I
stuff.
got the little containers of steamed vegetables, a rotisserie, and then like they do like the coleslaw mix, which is basically just cabbage mix, like three color cabbage mix. And I got kimchi, so I got my fermented stuff. I got
Nice. Even getting fermented stuff on the road. Look at this.
yeah, because they had a nice bag of really delicious kimchi and some tart cherry juice. I got it all, man.
Uh,
I also got eggs. I just crack the eggs in whatever I'm eating for dinner, and then it cooks in the microwave.
Sounds like it might be healthier than when you're home. um, Cool, man. A good update. Also, a lot of great tips and takeaways for anyone listening who travels frequently. Just got to put a little bit more work into it if you want to eat healthy on the road. Updates for me. I don't have a lot. Back's feeling better. I'm back to running and haven't had any pain. I'm back to squatting. A little bit heavier. I haven't gone I haven't pushed it to like 90% or anything, which I don't even know what my 100% is anymore. But I did have that back injury for a while, but I feel like I'm finally fully recovered from that. Definitely will get nowhere close to a 5-minute mile, 500-pound back squat at the end of this cycle, which is where this project, the BCT thing, will conclude. And then I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not I want to keep going for it. I might, and if I do, it'll just be super slow burn. Like I might just follow the H2K track and like put in some extra squatting, like on a strength day, if I continue, and
We
just
had like
right.
Strack that was like geared towards strength.
Yeah, but I wanted, yeah, I miss H2K. I miss some of the work that's done there.
You always
Uh,
do like gravitate back. It's like I'll go this and I'll come back to H again. I'll go this and I'll come back to H.
H2K is my medicine, man. I feel like that's like it's like my vitamins. I gotta take it to stay sane. So yeah. Anyway, we'll see where things end up, but I'm just kind of slow playing that one, and but I'm happy to be feeling good and being back fully recovered. If anybody has any back problems and they want to talk about all the ridiculous things I did to try and get my back better, because that's what happens with me. If I get hurt, it becomes the only thing I'm like focusing on until it's better. And now I'm better and I feel great about it. Um, HQ, EO3 HQ. No, I'm not in it yet. All right. So why does everyone just back off? Quit making fun of me. It is a very hard time for construction, but we're actually really close. They're in the process of painting it, which I didn't know was a very long process. But now that I just use my brain for like 5 seconds, it's like, oh yeah, they have to paint like every square inch of this thing inside and outside, fill all the holes, make sure the trim work is good. Like that's an extensive project. So it's taking a while, but after the painting's done, probably only about 6 more months. So no, I have no idea. I should, after the painting's done, we're pretty much done. We should be able to move in there not too much long after that, but knock on wood, cross my fingers, all those things, because every time I think I'm almost in there, I'm not. But
And you can move in there with your two card tables and a microwave.
yeah, and I could just live there.
That is easy
You like that blog post title, don't you? Come on.
because I like Beck. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's a deep
yeah,
meaning there. But yeah, I think that's about all I have. I've just been training. Life's good. I did the EO3 5K this morning just randomly, and it sucks a lot worse on a true form, just like everything else does. A little bit slower on the true form, but not too bad. But yeah, that's it. Now, as far as the Garage Gym Athlete Into 3 Fitness goes, it's not sexy, but we are in the process of doing a giant migration, which I mentioned on the webinar. It's you're either not going to notice a thing, or you'll notice something, or everything will break. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And our diehards will know. They will know what happened, but we're hoping that it's so flawless you barely know what happened. So
we're gonna
we'll
have to have the whole team back to battle stations when that
yeah,
switch flipped.
everyone man your battle stations as we flip the switch.
I'm just picturing the movie Down Periscope. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it was like this crazy Navy movie. It was really funny, and this guy that is like an electrician, he always is messing with stuff. Anytime he messes with the electricity and stuff, he gets shocked. And then there's one time where he does a bunch of crazy stuff, puts on a rubber glove, looks the other way, and flips the switch. And he was expecting to get shocked, but he wasn't. He didn't. I think that's gonna happen.
I hope that's what happened, because he didn't get shocked.
Yeah.
So that's what should happen. But that's it. Thanks everybody for listening. If you're part of the community, thank you so much for following the training, being consistent, and being a part of everything that we're doing here. If you are not a part of the training, go sign up. Go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, and see what this is all about. But that's it for this week. And for my weekly reminder, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. To the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.